plan. All right, we finally got the recording going. That's an unfortunate artifact of the system, but I should have planned better. So anyway, I don't know if that really answers your question, Kevin, but you're a part of the local leadership team. So, you know, I suspect it'll work differently in the different states as to how quickly we're able to address things. But if we have something that needs to be planted in the next 6 weeks, or we have to wait until next year, you know, I'm going to be trying to push that through so that we aren't waiting until next year.
Okay, and then one other quick question. As far as whether it's a Ducks Unlimited agreement or a natural resource trust agreement, what determines that? Is that what practice that they use? Or, I mean, how do I tell a landowner when I'm talking to a landowner about a project, you know, what kind of an agreement they would enter into and who that might be with?
Well, I think that, you know, up front, you probably would want to leave that open, because
Okay.
we're going to need to, you know, as a local leadership team, see what funding we have available. And that may be changing through time. And it also, you know, it's conceivable that we could use both. You know, if we had, for instance, if we had somebody that wanted to take advantage of the free seed, that would come through the trust. And if they were as well doing, you know, maybe spraying out the area or prepping the site, we'd probably want to use the NIFWIF funding for that, and or at least we could conceivably do that, or putting a fence in, we may want to do that. And so then we might actually have two agreements, one for part and one for the other part, trying to do the best that we can to maximize the funding available to the producer with the funding sources that we have.
Okay, thanks.
The good news is that the project manager doesn't really have to deal with that. They submit it, and you know, I could see where perhaps, you know, if you had a producer that didn't really want to do an agreement with Ducks Unlimited, you know, it'd be good for them to know that, you know, I don't know why they would do that, but, you know, people have weird notions. And if they decided they didn't really want to have a contract with Ducks Unlimited, we'd probably be all, you know, you may be all done with them unless they just want some seed. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to pop up the, oh, wait, I think I do.
Steve, I think there's another question in the chat.
Yeah, a couple of them. So just one.
Two. Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm trying to. So I think the answer to the question here, to kind of echo that sentiment, are there restrictions dependent on where the funding comes from, or are those standardized across the funding sources for the sake of NGRIP funding, or is it practice dependent? It's a little bit of both. We do have some cash funds that we could potentially use to put something into play. We're probably gonna, you know, I would guess that we're gonna want to hold back those cash funds for things that maybe are a little more complex for some of the other funding sources like NIFWIF. Obviously, with the World Wildlife Fund money, we're only paying for seed. So if somebody's looking for seed, we'd like to use it from that fund. Wouldn't necessarily have to, but that obviously is going to be a better deal for everybody all around, because if we provide the seed, we'd be paying for 100% of the cost, up to $100 an acre. If we did it with the NIFWIF funding, we'd probably go back to a different, we'd probably use EQIP rates for that, which are probably less. Did I get that, Taylor?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, we'll have some more time for questions. Let me kind of see if I can figure out again how to share my screen and get the right one. I think I skipped one of the stages in this, but I think we're where we are now. So to go a little bit more in depth on some of the questions that we had, and again, you guys will all have access to this PowerPoint for what it's worth. So the project had come to me. It's going to get distributed to and reviewed by the local leadership team in each state, and that'll either, of course, result in, we didn't really like the proposal. We like the proposal, but we need to make a few changes to it, in which case you'd get that back, or we like it a lot. We're just going to approve it and move forward. So this could be iterative. We're hoping that by having that conversation back and forth, we all learn a little bit better how to do this and get faster at it and more efficient. So once a project is actually approved, again, I'll work on developing a contract between our funder and the producer. That'll go out electronically so that we can take care of that pretty quickly, but I'll keep project manager in the loop all the time so that they know what's going on. We'll have to deal with, at that same point, as I pointed out earlier, any compliance that we have to take care of before we can actually get started. But once we have the agreement in place and any compliance taken care of, we'll give you the green light to go back and work with the producer on implementing the project. So there are a number of different program resources. We've got a kind of put together some instructions that go point by point on the project proposal, so that at least we're trying to anticipate the questions that you might have, so that you don't have to call anyone, at least not all the time. We also have a manual of the program that's out there that attempts to describe as many things about the program as we can and what our intents are. We have a repository actually in the manual right now. There's a link in there that'll take you to a repository of all sorts of different forms, so you can find the IRS forms and that sort of thing that you might need, compliance forms, those kinds of things. You can also, again, this will be available to you, so you don't need to write it down, but you can contact me anytime to discuss various aspects of project. If it's your first one, and it's kind of complex, you might want to verify some things, so I'm available. So I think that's the entire PowerPoint. People who were hoping to look at the recording are probably gonna, I may have to do another session to help them get through this, because I don't think we got enough of a recording to probably do what we want. But so we're ahead of schedule here. I was afraid we'd get bound up, but I think we're doing pretty well. Do we have any questions from anyone right now about things?
Steve, this is Kevin again. I got one on again, kind of the logistics or the proposal. So once the proposal is approved by the leadership team, then the agreement actually gets kicked over to you. Is that right? So you would actually start working with the producer on a contract?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
so
again, we can work that out. If you got a producer that you really need to hand deliver that to, we can do it that way. If you'd rather me send it to them, we can work it out that way. I'm not trying to insert myself into the relationship. What I've found is that it's oftentimes a lot of work on part of the project manager to have to make another run out to the ranch, and if you send it to them and ask them to fax it back, you might not ever see it again. But
okay, yeah, either way, it could probably work with, the project manager or you, or both working on it together.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then what about on the website, it shows that landowner contribution form. Is that
Right.
part of the proposal then, or is that part of the agreement?
Yeah, I think that it would probably, that's one of those things we haven't, at least at this point, dictated be a part of the proposal. But if I were doing it, I would want to use that just to, again, clarify so everybody knows what's going on. But that is available on the website, and it's something that you may want to consider doing up front.
Are all the forms up to date now on the website? The cost table and the proposal form and everything?
Yes.
Okay.
I spent the last couple of days making sure everything worked. I'm sure that links, there's still probably something that I haven't accounted for or I broke in the process, but they should be up to date right now.
Okay, good, thanks.
Hey, Kevin, I just thought I'd chime in on the landowner agreements. If landowner match is part of the project, that will be required eventually.
Right.
Just to make sure that's clear for everybody. When exactly that gets put together, I guess is up to you all, but it has to be part of the agreement if we're going to count that as a match.
I think I would probably just do it right on the front end and just kind of show that's kind of the overall part of the overall project, as far as bringing landowner match and just as far as when that leadership team is looking at it, they'd have a little better picture of what the whole project consists of.
Yep, I agree with that. And, I think we just hadn't had a chance to decide that together that we were going to do it. But, I foresee down the road actually including that as a part of the proposal, just another page in the proposal so that it's easier for everyone to just do it up front. But yeah, Catherine's absolutely right. We're going to have to know that. I have a database of all these projects and I try to keep track of all those things in one line of code, really, make sure it's all together. So the other question I got here is, are applications currently open? Yes, today is kind of the start of things. We're looking at accepting applications until we have exhausted all of our funds, and hopefully we'll get some more funds. But I expect that it'll take a while to get them all obligated. We will keep you posted on that. Other questions? Anything I can show you again if you want to see something and talk through it? So how much is available this cycle? We have somewhere in the neighborhood, we haven't really decided on the cash side of things, but we have something on the order of $250,000 right now. Remember, your questions are really important for everybody else to hear right now. That's probably the most important part of this, is for you to be able to ask questions that I haven't thought of that other people need to know the answer to. Can you share a PDF of the presentation? Yes, the presentation will be made available. Is there a standard term for the agreements? Great question. Our agreements are 10-year agreements. Other questions? Certainly some of you have some projects in mind. Be a good time to, do yourself a favor and ask some questions about, there's no dumb questions here. These are all going to be things that people have to struggle through. So the question is, with prices of materials rapidly rising, how soon might project proposals that are submitted be approved? Well, I expect we're going to try to do, where we have projects, we're going to try to do something in April, our first review in April, or kind of a general review, trying to capitalize on projects that need to go in the ground this spring. And I think your point about prices are spot on as well. Get them going before things get further out of hand. Some of those, though, that are, if we have projects that are not time sensitive, we may push those to June. That's kind of our ballpark thinking right now. I would say that if we have some projects that come in that we need to act on them even more quickly, that's, let us know that if we don't get this done by April 1, it's probably not going to happen. Let us know so that we have the ability to kind of crank things up. Are there requirements for the number of species in the mix and are tame grasses as well as native eligible? Generally speaking, we're going to be looking at natives, and you're going to probably get within reason, a more robust mixture is probably going to get you a higher score when we go through the ranking process. We are, we understand that plant materials are not always available, and that has to be taken into account. But we do want to see natives out there. We like to see grasses and forbs. Again, this is not just about. It's obviously about grazing, and we want to support grazing, but it's also about making sure that we have the habitat for the birds out there, as well as habitat for the food the birds might eat, meaning insects. So the question is, what % cost share are we offering for this program? We're not really providing cost share per se. We're using the NRCS model, which has that embedded in it, but in order to, for the most part, not have to deal with invoices and receipts, that sort of thing, we're using that NRCS approach. Generally speaking, the NRCS system is supposedly based on a 50-50 cost share, but I think that's pretty highly variable. We are, one of the other things that as a part of the match form that Kevin mentioned, we're trying to capture by having a landowner ascribe their part of that to us. We're trying to capture some match there for our at least our NIFWIF agreement. But generally speaking, this is using the NRCS approach, and we're probably going to capture. I guess the NRCS is supposedly, I think I said 50%. I think it's supposedly 75%. But that, of course, when they use it, it changes if you're underserved or whatever. But that's how we're kind of looking at it. Catherine.
Yeah, I guess I would just encourage everybody that we would, if you're doing fence or water development projects, we'd like to see at least a 25% cost share out of the total expenses. So that includes the landowner donation. So that's a target. It's not 100% of everything, including landowner's time. So I think that gives everybody a target, at least 25% from non-federal sources for fence and water development.
Yeah, you said that better than I did. I was not thinking well on my feet there. Yeah, we obviously have some match that we have to come up with for, particularly for NIFWIF grant.
Steve, this is Kevin again. I'll just offer this up. I did, and you know this, I guess, but I did go through a proposal just in draft right now and that we're working on, and it's actually pretty painless just for everybody out there. You know, Steve's worked out a few kinks in it right now, and I'm sure there'll be a few more that we'll have to work through, but it actually isn't too bad. But I was kind of wearing two hats here too, as a member of the local leadership team. I would say just, you know, a lot of these questions people are asking comes back to me, it comes back to writing a really good proposal, really put a lot of information in there, you know, kind of look at things that you think the leadership team is going to be asking of that. You know, what's the need? What's the, you know, expected management out there? What's the historical plant community been? What are you really doing out there? And what's the project meant to do? And I think the more information that leadership team has, the quicker they can move these through the process. And I mean, that's just my take on it. I don't know what others think, but I think the more information we have, the easier it'll be for that decision to be made.
Well said. Thanks, Kevin. I think that's really important. You know, to a certain degree, it's really hard with conservation projects to just do prescriptive management, because we're working in landscapes that are different, and we're working with producers that have different objectives, and there are different birds that we're trying to manage. So as much as we'd like this to be, you know, click a couple boxes and you're going to get money, that doesn't really get us to the hitting the objectives, and it probably doesn't even really get us to the into the ballpark of hitting the objectives the producer has, unless they're really just looking for somebody to help them pay for fence or something like that, and we could hit that objective. But you know, if it's not doing anything for birds, then we probably don't have a lot of business being in there, because all of our funding, the expectation is that we will be able to blend the producer objectives with the bird objectives that we have. So what type of haying restrictions are there on crop ground planted back to grass? Well, you know, grazing's always preferred to haying, or almost always, unless you're using it for some sort of a management tactic. But generally speaking, I would think that you know, haying is going to be pretty limited on this kind of stuff. I don't know that we can, you know, I think if you have a producer that is planning on including a project as a part of a haying rotation or something like that, you'll want to put that into the proposal so that that's captured what's intended, and so that the local leadership team can determine if that is going to help us meet our objectives, or if it's just going to get in the way of the objectives. Obviously, whenever we do projects, there's always, you know, the producer could go back and do something that we didn't intend. And maybe, you know, as a part of our project, we're looking at trying to end up with better structure, or, you know, more residual cover. And you know, the producer could come back later and increase their stocking rate because they divided up the pasture, and we end up trading away some heterogeneity perhaps for homogeneity that you might get from more aggressive grazing. So we can't account for all of that, but again, if you know, somebody is if we're going to do a project that's not going to end up providing much for birds, that's probably not going to get a very high score.
Hey, Steve, this is Kevin Ellison. Just thinking through opening the floodgates to proposals here, is a recommendation as a best first step to check in with you? Because I'm just thinking, you know, there's so many different practices. It's hard to know what you're going to have your fill of or what you want more of. It seems like the best real-time feedback we could get would be to call you before starting proposals.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go there first, but if you feel like you need it, I would. Probably depends on the complexity of the project. You know, some of the things that are going to be easier for the local leadership team to jump on are when we're converting a piece of cropland back to natives, that's obviously pretty valuable. And if that's a part of the project, that's probably going to get a lot of value. But a lot of the landscape that we work in the Northern Great Plains is already green side up, and so then that becomes a little more nuanced as to how we add value to an existing grazing system and how we justify whether that's going to truly add value for the birds that are out there. But we're definitely interested in that. We are leaving it a little bit open-ended so that we can accommodate all the different circumstances that exist out there, but also creativity on the part of the biologist, other practitioner that might be developing the project. We'd like to see, hopefully we'll learn from the projects that are developed.
Thanks. Yeah, I was definitely thinking of crop to grass as your top priority, but I know a lot of landowners that want to go from tame to native, and I was wondering where that would fit in.
Yeah,
Is that
no,
the nuance?
yeah, no, I think going from tame to native is a big deal for us, and we're definitely interested in those. But again, it's kind of context based. If it's in an area where we aren't going to make a lot of gains for bird populations, it may be harder to justify. But generally speaking, we're going to be pretty favorable to planting cropland back to natives or planting tame grass back to natives. Other questions? I don't want to make it sound like this is easy, because your work isn't easy. There's tons and tons of complexity that goes into it, into what you do, and building the relationships with the producer. One of the things that we will bear in mind is that sometimes you're working with a new producer that hasn't done projects, and we don't expect them to do projects that are going to go the full distance right away. And we want to be mindful of that, because we'd like to see some of these producers using conservation programs to maybe go to the next level on their second try. And so if you've got a situation like that, you definitely want to let us know that this is a new producer. Or if you're dealing with a producer that's particularly influential in your landscape and you think that it may become kind of a catalyst project, or if the project is going to lend itself to maybe a tour or something. I think those are all important things to include in your proposal, so that we know that. Sometimes projects are truly one-off. We do a project with producer, we don't hear from them again, they don't talk to their neighbors, and that didn't really accelerate conservation in a way that maybe it could have in another circumstance. So let us know that. Trying to pull up a landowner, a producer contribution form, since that was mentioned. See if I can show what that looks like here. I'll share my screen again while people are thinking of other fabulous questions to ask. So this, you should be able to, is everybody seeing another form pop up?
Yep.
Okay. So this is just another one that I put together that, again, tries to articulate what's going to happen there and what we expect. And so this would just be, again, now if I were to incorporate this into the proposal, and I could do that, we could dispense with some of the other information here, but in a large part, what we want to do is kind of capture what is expected. including potentially, there is potential to monetize labor if that's out there, but so this is another form, pretty simple, just kind of putting down what we expect they're going to contribute and what the value of that is, so that we can have a paper trail for auditors and whatnot. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but any thoughts on that? Cool. Any last questions, comments, concerns? We've got some other folks who are on local leadership teams that are on the call. Any of you have anything to add or suggest? Well, I'll tell you what, we probably, sounds like most people have gotten what they came for, at least for the admission price. I'm going to hang around. If folks have some questions they didn't want to bring up or just want to chat about something, I'll be here. So another question popped up. Is there a benefit in terms of probability of getting funding if a producer is doing the labor themselves as opposed to hiring it out? Probably not. It may, I can't think of a situation where that would be a big tipping point, but it could be. If we're doing a music restoration Beaver Dam analog project, possibly they'd be able to contribute more there that would make sense, but I'm not thinking of anything. Catherine?
Well, just that if they do the labor themselves, that does count as match. We just need to, that's where that form comes in. So yeah, it would be in kind as opposed to cash going out. In a way, in kind might just make the project work better, right? Because we need less cash for the same value, but it doesn't get extra points, but it may work out that the project fits together better with that in-kind contribution, as long as we can document it.
Good.
Hey, Steve, I was just going to mention, I've already talked to our staff in the western half of South Dakota a little bit, and we have a lot of applications that aren't going to get funded through EQIP just due to our lack of funding, especially the ones that aren't inside our CIS proposals. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for our staff to hopefully take, cherry pick some of those applications that didn't necessarily get funded through our EQIP cycle in fiscal year 22, that I think we'll be able to roll into this program pretty easily. So just so everyone from NRCS and Western South Dakota knows that this is a good opportunity for, getting some conservation on the ground that maybe wouldn't have gotten on the ground due to our lack of funding through EQIP.
Thanks for that.
You bet.
So one of the things I didn't say earlier that probably is self-evident, but we really see EQIP as being a way to fill in gaps. And, there are programs out there already, obviously, that are doing various things. If those are working for you, use those. If you have a program with your agency and you're able to do everything you need with that program and you have enough funding, use those. If this program helps you solve a problem, fill in a gap, something doesn't quite fit the programs you're used to using, but you think they're high value for keeping the grass green side up or benefiting grassland birds, then use this and we'll learn from it. Fully expect that it'll be used differently in the 4 different states and even by individuals based on what's available to them. If you've got a CIS, maybe you've got something that that's easier for you to work with. We don't expect this program to do everything for everyone, but we do hope that it adds value, and at least for some of you, that it gives you some tools in your toolbox that you don't have right now to get some things done. And again, it is our program, so if we figure out that the next time we do an evaluation of it, that certain parts of it aren't doing what we'd like, we can change it. We don't have to get permission from anybody, and we can get money from different sources to address different things if what we have right now doesn't quite work. We'll try to find some other funding to do what will work. Well, I'm going to give you the rest of your day back unless you want to stay on and ask some more questions. I'm going to hang around for as long as folks need me. Otherwise, appreciate everybody joining in. Pretty exciting to see so much interest, and hopefully we'll get some good projects, and we'll go from there.